Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Season 2, Episode number 3, number tres, of Re-Educated, a podcast where we rethink, relearn, and get re-educated on many topics relating to our Black community here in the state of New Mexico. Devon and I, Danny Golden, are your hosts, and we're coming at you from Albuquerque, New Mexico. We just want to remind you to go and like, share, subscribe, all that. Continue to support us so that we can keep this platform going and continue to discuss all of these very important issues. Want to give a big shout out to the New Mexico State Office of African American Affairs for creating this platform for us in the first place so that Dev and I can get on here, chop it up, hang out with y'all. You can go visit the State Office of African American Affairs online at OAAA, so OAAA.state.nm.us. What's up, Dev?
What's good?
Not too much.
Just to let y'all know that don't forget 3 is the magic number.
3 is the magic number.
And so I feel like this is going to be a magical episode.
Yeah.
Very intense. Just wanted to give you all a disclaimer that this is going to be a more sensitive topic that we're going to be discussing. But before we get started, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Honestly, I don't know. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I got my natural hair out. So it's crazy because about a year ago, I cut it all off. I had one of those moments in the mirror where I was just crying and cutting my hair off. It was such a release though. Yeah. And but now it's grown out so much and it's all happy and healthy. I've just been loving on it it's like a house plant.
Yeah.
You just put all the love and all the moisture into it, especially in the desert.
Oh yeah.
You know how that is. It's trying to keep our natural tresses moisturized and healthy. So, but I answered that question like that because my hair has a lot to do with my mood sometimes. If I'm having a good hair day, it's a good day, period.
I definitely hear you on that. And it's looking good and everything.
Thanks to the Crown Act, we can wear our natural hair without worry.
I was just about to say, we rocking our crowns and stuff. Yes. You got the fro going, I got the dreads. And so
I love it. Locked up. I love it.
It's nice to be able to have our crowns and be able to wear it and embrace it even more now that there's been legislation that's passed that provides another barrier for discrimination against us and our crowns. And so, it's nice and it's very surreal. And shout out to all the wonderful individuals from the Central Organizing Committee that did their due diligence and all the individuals involved in getting the Crown Act passed. It's amazing. And I think this is just another step in making New Mexico an equitable place for Black people to live. Yeah,
we want to be here and show up 100% ourselves. And that's definitely a big step in that direction. So thank you. Thank you to all of you for doing that work. But so we're getting into it. Like we said, this is Season 2. Episode 3, and we're titling it Shot for Shot because today we're actually going to be discussing the vaccine, which is something that it seems like is being talked about everywhere, every day. You see it on, signs on the road on my drive over here. It's like, get your shot, get vaccinated. So it's everywhere. So it's definitely worth talking about and kind of bringing a lot of the information, history, et cetera, to the surface when having this conversation. I wanted to rewind, though, really quick because we've been talking about, in talking about the vaccine, we've been going through this pandemic life for over a year now. I think I was furloughed from my job, actually, when all of this popped off, March 14th of 2020. Do you remember where you were and what was happening when at the genesis of all this, when it started coming to light?
Yeah, definitely. And so a little bit before that, I ended up dealing with some health stuff. And so I was just coming out of the hospital the end of February. And then going into March, I was getting back into it. I was getting back into work. Yeah. We were planning for what we were going to do for the summer. And then we get a message saying, okay, everybody needs to go home. Everybody needs to stay out of the office for X amount of time. We're in a pandemic. And so it was a little bit traumatizing just seeing that, hey, we're in a pandemic and like this is, even though before it spiraled, is for me, it just felt like this was going to be something that was going to be extremely traumatizing. It was going to be very hard to navigate. And again, for me, I'm very social. I like to be around people and I like to be in person. And so just initially not like having to work from home, it's okay at first, but again, I'm one of those people that like to be around people. So I just knew that everybody having to stay home, this was going to be very, very difficult to really navigate, even before we actually got into the meat of things.
See, and it's interesting that you say that because I really didn't have any, I don't know, I just didn't think about, I was like, oh, everybody's going home. Like, you know, I was put on furlough from my day job, but at the same time, it was just like, I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't have any preconceived notions or like, oh, this is going to be like really bad. You hear, what the media talks about and what the public health officials are saying. And I think it took a minute to like really set in. And then, we have quarantine became a big old thing. Everybody's learning like what quarantine even means because it hadn't really been that relevant in our society up until recently. And then it became a big old buzzword. But, then you're in quarantine and you don't really get to see the effects and the impact of that until like, I think it was like weeks in and people are like, wow, this is crazy. Like this is really happening. I was watching the tracker like at work on those first, that first week, just like those numbers kind of just skyrocket and seeing like not only the national number go really high, but the global number was just like, whoa. So it was an interesting time. And it leads us to today, with April 2021. And we're kind of in this in-between stage where some places are getting back to normal. Some places like, Texas are completely open. Y'all see it on Instagram. Oh, yeah. Like, people are really in the club. People are really turning up. But, some places, kind of like New Mexico, I feel like we're one of those places where we're still kind of got our foot on both sides of the fence. And I think for this state, the vaccine is a big part of like pushing us onto the other side of that fence. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that I definitely think as a state we're doing what we need to do, and we're doing the right thing and just slowly transitioning into a little bit of normalcy, understanding that we won't get to back to how things were. Like
we were talking about, fast forward till now, we're here. And, the vaccine is being rolled out. The New Mexico Department of Health is the main, proponent of the vaccination plans. They are working with other state agencies, private, tribal councils, in order to come up with a comprehensive plan to get the state vaccinated, because it's their thinking that, once everyone or we reach a certain level or a certain percentage of vaccination in the state, then they'll feel comfortable with proceeding to open things up. It's a sticky...
Yes, it definitely is.
It's a sticky thing. Like Instagram, social media is all... It seems like you just see so much from both sides. Like, to vaccinate or not to vaccinate.
Exactly.
But I think it comes down to... There's so many factors. Like, education is a big factor. But for us, in our skin and having our ancestry in this country, there are a lot of other things that come up when we talk about, state-sponsored, public health for Black people. For many, me, myself included, there is some, distrust there. So that's could be a challenge, for us.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree. And I understand that there's a precedence of trauma when it comes to healthcare and getting proper healthcare. And so for Black people in particular, like even myself, I have some skepticism when it comes to getting vaccines, certain treatment, especially when it's been a history of trauma for my people prior to, and even now. There's been times where over the last couple of years that I've had some mistreatment in the hospital, and I've not felt comfortable, or I feel like, the hospital isn't the place for me because, again, it's just one of those things that we've talked about the last season where the practice specifically when it comes to Black people, there hasn't been a lot of research in terms of consensual research and ethical research and a very equitable reference to Black people in classrooms and in the medical settings. And so I definitely understand that there's like this, again, the precedence of trauma and of fear and skepticism when it comes to healthcare, specifically with vaccines. But I think the first thing is having a holistic approach to understanding like the concepts of vaccines and the history of it and just how it came about. And one of the things with the history, vaccines or the concept of vaccines have been around for a long time. I saw somewhere on the internet, and I still need to do some more research, get some more credible sources, but it seems that the original structured vaccine or like the first like legitimized vaccine came, I want to say in like 1797 or something in the 1700s. And it originated
in this country.
Yeah, in this country. Yeah, let's
Just to be clear.
establish that. But it came from the name came from a smallpox outbreak where it was like vaccinia something. I had to look it up. I'll Google it in a second and give y'all the answer in a little bit. But essentially, they took like parts of the smallpox and injected it into somebody, and then after monitoring that individual, they didn't develop any symptoms or they didn't develop smallpox.
Right. So that's how that was kind of the beginning stages of like, oh, hey, if we do this, take this general like scientific principle, you know, injecting this live virus essentially or live disease into the person, they build up the immunity and the antibodies themselves in order to protect them from future infection.
Exactly.
So, okay. Yeah. I mean, smallpox, measles, mumps. What else do we get vaccinated for? Diphtheria. There's, I don't know. That might not be right. Don't quote me on that. But there's,
there's a lot of different viruses and diseases that we get vaccinations for. And depending on like what the disease is and what the vaccine is, some you just get it once in your life. Some it's like every several years. And so it just depends on what the disease is and like.
Yeah, and your age. They have like a whole structure of like what's, required for school and, for travel and different things like that. So as a society, we're not wholly like unfamiliar with vaccines.
Yeah.
I think what makes this one so big and so controversial and so involved for everyone is that coronavirus is this strain, because there's other, coronavirus, but COVID-19 is new to us. This impact on our society we have not seen from a single like disease during our lifetime. So when you look at that, it's like it is scary because we've gone from, no vaccine and, even the people who we normally trust in public health not having any clue, not knowing what to do, to like months later, now we have a vaccine. You know what I mean? And what does that look like, right? For the smallpox vaccine or measles and mumps, that's been around for years and years and years.
Yeah.
We know how that impacts people. We know what that looks like in the societal framework. But for this one, we don't really know. And then throw in, the historical experiences that our people have had at the hands of public health officials and the medical community, it's rough. You know, I mean, it brings to mind the Tuskegee Airmen experiments, the syphilis experiments, where they were experimenting on these men against their will, and they it was torturous to them, you know, and that's not the only. I feel like that's the most recognizable instance of that, but it's definitely not unique. You know, it's been happening as a long history where, you know, we've been utilized to conduct experiments, to, you know, dissect, to advance, you know, medical studies and vaccines and things like that. And so rightfully so, there's some apprehension and mistrust, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, I just think about, like what you said, our own experiences, you know? But at the same time, it's hard because we've also endured the trauma of this last year. You know what I mean? Where our lives were drastically changed and drastically impacted. So
yeah, and I definitely agree. And I think that when it comes to just these experimentations, one of the biggest things is not having consent first and foremost, because a lot of these experiments that were done in the past on Black people were without consent. And then again, like the ethics of it all is like, what are you looking to gain out of doing the experiment? And I remember looking, it was like, I want to say in the 40s or 50s that there's an experiment that was done on Black people who were not as affluent or come from lower socioeconomic situations. And essentially what they did for those Black kids and Black men in particular were seeing if having an extra Y chromosome makes you a criminal. And so essentially what they're looking at is trying to criminalize Black kids before they became before they even know who they are. And so, you know, like situations like that, situations where you have people who are in the prison system, Black people and prisoners in particular, and they would like inject them with a certain chemical in like their testicles just to see what their rate of sperm enhancement would be. And so, like,
crazy
putting Black people in situations to where they're getting experimented without consent, without the ethics of the experiment being monitored. And we're still a long way. There have been improvements when it comes to those type of experimentations, but we're definitely in a situation to where we still have to mobilize, test, experimentation, and research when it comes to Black people.
100%. And fast forward to, you know, today, like it's incumbent on all of us to like do our research. You know what I mean? And there are a lot of, you know, sources out there right now about, you know, with information about the vaccine. So, you know, you can go to resources like the World Health Organization. You can utilize resources like, you know, the New Mexico Department of Health, because a lot of people have similar questions, have similar fears, have similar, you know, situations or concerns. And I find that, you know, as I'm looking over the Department of Health website, there's a frequently asked questions section, and they're really pretty thorough. You know what I mean? And not just, you know, doing your research like on this. Like we said, like vaccines have a long history in this country. And so being objective and finding, you know, the information, and also, you know, taking care of yourself, you know, drinking water and eating healthy and exercising and all of those things, which I'm so glad that the State Office of African American Affairs has, a stake in that. And that's important, to the office, and recognizing, like, yes, we're in a pandemic, but you guys have always done a great job of, making Black health, the center of a lot of your initiatives. So I think that's going to be a wraparound effort, from us, so in the office. So
yeah, definitely. And don't forget that we're also still in a pandemic. Like, getting your vaccine or not, you still need to do your due diligence to protect the people that you care about, and, protect everybody else around you. And wearing a mask again, like washing your hands, doing all the things, all the little things that you can do just to slow down like the spread and to protect the people. It's like, for me, I'll probably never stop wearing a mask. Like, I'm
gonna just rock with the mask for now, because
people be just breathing on me, man. And then I'm like, if you ain't 6 feet away from me, don't come near me.
Isn't that funny how we like got into this whole? Because like I was already like that, like that person that's like, why are you up on me in this line, like. We need to have 6 feet anyway.
Oh yeah, like, are you gonna pay for my food? You gonna take care of the tab? You standing this close? But
that's funny.
Yeah, I just think there are certain things that, even regardless of whether you get the vaccine or not, that you can do in order to prevent the spread and to protect the people in your community.
Yeah, definitely. Should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a quick break.
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will discuss some more about the vaccine, give you some more resources. And so stick around. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Re-Educated, a podcast where we rethink, relearn, and get re-educated on many topics relating to the Black community here in the state of New Mexico. We just had a quick break. The music that you heard is compliments of M. Scott Loves Life. Marcus Scott, our post-production engineer, thank you so much to Better Sense. You can visit our production house, Better Sense, at bttrsnc.com. Before we went to the break, we were talking about the vaccine. So today's episode is titled
Shot for Shot.
Shot for Shot. We're talking about the shot, y'all. So we got into, kind of how we got here, kind of recapped the genesis of all of this, and living in historical times where, we're dealing with a public health crisis. And where we are with that now is trying to get, I keep wanting to say back to normal, but it's really forward to a new normal, So we're trying to open things up. And a big part of that has been, implementing the vaccine for COVID-19. And something in discussing that came up for Devon and I was, especially on this platform, was how that impacts our community and what we think of it, how we feel about it, and the history of it. I keep saying it, but what I'm referring to is the medical relationship with Black people and medical institutions, public health. There's a distrust there, and rightfully so. We touched on that, before the break, and how when there's a long and drawn out history of experimentation without consent, unethical and torturous experimentation, then, fast forward to today where, the medical literature is off, talking about Black people don't experience as much pain. And I mean, just all the crazy things that are in the literature and still present today, that informs, how we move about this vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough. I pulled up a medical journal by a doctor named what is her name? It's Dr. Vanessa Northington Gamble. And her writing is titled Under the Shadow of Tuskegee, African Americans and Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really talks about how that relationship is impacted today. But Devon, you made a good point that, with all of that history,
mm-hmm.
what's kind of like our place now? You were talking about how we can kind of be a part of like the shift in that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that as we continue to create more standards around ethics when it comes to research, when it comes to experimentation, and when it comes to understanding of Black people in relation to healthcare and medical practices, I think there's several things that we need to look at and being integrated into the processes. I think on the ground level, in terms of volunteering to be a part of more of the research that's going on. And so there's like certain instances and situations that Black people, like there's certain research that says Black people are immune to this or they don't experience this and that, or there's just no research on the effects of a certain type of like medicine or a certain type of drug or whatever it may be on Black people because, again, we've had so much trauma from stuff in the past that our ancestors went through that we're not comfortable with doing those things. But I think that if we continue to be a part of the processes on the ground level, if we start to penetrate these different boards and these different oversight committees on like research that's going on and have more of a stake in what practices are being told, as well as having more lay people or people who aren't experts in fields being a part of the process and saying, hey, I don't think this is okay, or we need to look at this differently, because at the end of the day, when it comes to the medical field and healthcare, there's some systemic issues that are in place. And so even though you may have Black doctors and Black professionals, they came up in a system that was oppressing Black people. And so we definitely need to have a holistic approach to just being a part of research and being a part of studies. And I think that one of the things that healthcare professionals and experts in the field need to do, they need to take the time to break down procedures and processes and what's going on. Because again, they say, or some of the rhetoric or narrative that's put in place is lay people or people who aren't experts are going to have too much difficulty in understanding the processes and understanding what's going on. And it's like, I think that when it comes to any information, but specifically when it comes to medical information, simplicity brings understanding and mobilization. Complexity breeds fear and oppression. And so if you're having a complex issue and you're trying to keep it complex and not bringing it to where everybody understands it, you're trying to oppress a certain amount of people who aren't privy to the information that you have.
Right. It becomes exclusionary.
Exactly.
And so the fear is not unwarranted. It's like if you don't make the effort to make this information digestible to the people that it impacts, then, by proxy, you're being oppressive.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And vice versa, if we really want to create an equitable society and mobilize our communities, we need to make complex information simple to those who aren't experts in the field.
Yeah.
And so I just think
100%.
that that's just one of the things that professionals and these institutions need to do just to show that they really care about us. And if they're not willing to do that, then it speaks volumes to the structure and the systemic issues that are embedded in the system.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's not a Black issue. That's an everybody issue.
Exactly.
That's, if people do not have that information, don't have access to that information, then they're already at a disadvantage. They're already, it creates more marginalization and, like you said, more fear. So, I agree with that 100%. Wise words from Coach Dave.
Thank you.
Yes, of
but
course.
Just to add on to that, not only us being more embedded in the processes on all levels, but also we need to have an understanding that technology is continuing to advance. Like 20 years ago, we didn't have a supercomputer in our pockets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We weren't able to have like things printed in 3D in the span of like 20 minutes. We had to like handcraft everything. And so I think as we continue to advance as a society, we have to understand that like certain processes are expedited.
Yeah.
And
it's not always just because there's like shady stuff going on, because I think that's kind of what we're getting at a little bit, because I think that the timeline of the vaccine has come into question for a lot of people. Like, it usually, we've been studying cancer for this long, or we've been studying this for this long, and we don't have, a vaccine for that, or we don't have, a cure for that. But that's not necessarily right to compare those two things, because we are in 2021. So now we just have so much more technology available to us that wasn't years ago. So like you said, it's just expediting it. And that's literally just because they've refined the processes. They have more information. They have more technological capabilities, not just because people are trying to get over and there's a whole conspiracy and things like that.
And
there's advancements.
Exactly. And I understand like there's two aspects to it. Like, one, we do have advancements in technology, and there's certain things that can expedite the process. But I also understand like there's certain things where it's like it takes 21 years to be 21.
Yeah.
And so there's there's also other parts of the process that you can't necessarily rush. And it's like it's like you just have to be patient. And so there are two aspects to it, but just understand like the process in its entirety is shortened or can be shortened because we have certain advancements in technology.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, but I think, again, when it comes to the vaccine, the best thing you can do is just inform yourself. Yeah. And there's like multiple resources, and look at both sides, look at reputable sources and take into account the historical aspect of vaccines as it pertains to Black people. Look at vaccines now and like the processes and the concepts of vaccines and how it works. Like, don't just look at one thing and say, oh, okay, I know everything. You have to look at everything. And I think that goes into, one, looking at reputable sources like the World Health Organization, the CDC for New Mexico, the Department of Health. Right. Also looking at some literature. I know one of the best literatures that comes to mind when we're talking about how Black people's relationship to healthcare in the medical system, medical apartheid, looking at that. And then, when you're looking at articles, making sure that they're peer-reviewed articles. When it's an article from a doctor, and make sure they have their PhD.
Actual credentials.
Yeah, their credentials, not only in the medical field, but in a specific concentration of the medical field.
Preferably one relevant to whatever it is that they're discussing.
Exactly. And so looking and doing that research, and again, I feel like one of the things that us as a society, especially because we have so much unlimited access to information, that it gets hard to really navigate and funnel out, and filter out some of the misinformation that's out there. Really just going back to basic research principles and practices and seeing that, okay, there's a hypothesis, observation, you have your hypothesis, you have your experiment, and then you have your analysis and data collection of the experiment. And then you have your conclusion, which, again, you see everything that happened, things that did work, things that didn't work, things that could be improved. And when you're looking at research, looking at all of that stuff and not just taking a piece of literature from a study or article and saying, oh, this is everything.
Yeah, right. Dissecting and really like delving in. And that we understand like it takes time, you know, and like life is happening.
Exactly.
It's just going. So we know like it does take time, but better to be, you know, informed, better to have done your own research. You trust yourself, you know, there's all these other factors with everyone else. But if you, at the end of the day, have done your research, then you can at least feel like you are making the best decision for you, you know, and I think that's what this comes down to. And if all of us individually, you know, do that, then, you know, then we'll be better off, you know, as a society. So, but it's really great that, you know, there are resources like you talked about, like the CDC, the New Mexico Department of Health. Actually, when we were talking about equity, I meant to mention that the Department of Health for New Mexico has an equity plan in place that specifically pertains to COVID-19 and the vaccination plan and all of that, because that's another concern that rises, you know, is it going to be equitable? So you can check out their website. You can see the comprehensive equity plan there. They also have a pretty it's a little behind. January is their last, I think like January 11th is the last time they tabulated how many doses of the vaccine have gone out, how many people have registered in order to receive their doses of the vaccine. Just looking at, you know, things like that and keeping your eye on things like that, informing yourself on the landscape wholly, you know, especially in your vicinity in the state of New Mexico, can only help inform your decisions. So I would definitely suggest checking those out.
Yeah, definitely. And again, don't forget that there's a lot of resources that are out there that you can look through and really get a complete and holistic understanding of what we're dealing with. And don't forget that regardless of if you have the vaccine or not, we're still in a pandemic. Like, don't just be out here wilding. Doing crazy stuff. Still do your due diligence to protect the people around you and protect your loved ones, and just take
care of yourself.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
I've been holding my tongue this whole episode, because where I'm coming from is, you know, take care of yourself. Don't just like, a vaccine is great. Yeah. But, you know, scarfing McDonald's and, you know, eating a lot of fast food and drinking soda and not exercising and all of these things. I mean, immunity is a big deal here. And I do realize that some of that is out of people's control just based off of their economic position and what have you. But do what is within your control. Obviously, I'm not coming at anybody who, you know, do what you can do. Yeah. That's all that I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking to. You know what I'm saying. You know, if it's within your power, which your body is, do that. You know, take care of it, and don't just rely on, you know, a shot to keep you healthy and prevent, because your body has an immune system. And some of us, I'm grateful, you know, to have an immune system that protects me. Some of us, you know, don't. But nonetheless, I just wanted to throw that out there, because that's a huge, important part of it. And I don't think, I would be remiss to not mention that. I just couldn't come on here in good conscience and not, you know, urge people to take care of themselves in other ways as well.
No, definitely. And just to kind of add on to that, for those people who do have like certain resources available to them, allocate them to people who aren't as fortunate, because, you know, not everybody's been able to keep their job. Not everybody's been able to have like the housing support, the access to food, the access to water, all these different things. And just having like understanding that the ramifications of not having the access to stuff and having family in Texas going through a lot of the traumas when everything happened with their power. Like, I understand like the gravity of certain situations because of the pandemic. And so for those individuals who have certain privileges or who can give a little bit more, you know, help out your brothers and sisters, help out your neighbor, help out people who are less fortunate. And then, you know, we just have to do what we can to help our community. It takes a community to help a community.
Yeah, I got chills when you said that because I'm just like, we got to look out for each other. Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to, you know. And if you, like you said, if you have the resources, you have the means to have what you need for you and to reach out to somebody else, a helping hand, then do that 100%. Mm-hmm. I'm all for that and about that. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah,
yes. Sending all of you so much love. We know that was kind of a hard topic, but also necessary. Remember that you can go to the State Office of African American Affairs website, and you know you'll be able to access those resources that we talked about. oAAA.state.nm.us.
There we go. I was like, let's see if we got it this time.
Get it right. Get it tight.
Okay, hey. Look at you. Look at you trying to do some things.
You know, it's episode 3, so I better have my stuff together by now.
Oh, yeah. Nah, hey, I hear you. But yeah, just to add on to that, for those who are looking to get vaccinated, there's several different African-American specific sites that allow you to get vaccinated. And so for more information on that, you can go to our website and follow us on our different social media sites and our newsletter just to have up-to-date information on what you can do if you do want to get vaccinated.
Perfecto. Thanks, Dev. That was a good episode.
Yeah, I think it was too. I think it was necessary.
Yeah.
I'm excited for our listeners to listen to the interview that we'll have in our second part of the episode. And so we'll be bringing on a professional that can provide a little bit more insight on the vaccine and just some of the outlines and aspects that we might not have discussed or people might not think about in terms of the vaccine. And so make sure you stay tuned to that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it'll be really great. And so I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank y'all for joining us for yet another episode of Reeducated, and much love to you all. We'll catch you next time.
Deuces.